Hello, welcome to Understanding Trusts and ABLE Accounts webinar. We're really excited to have you here today as we dive into everything that you need to know about trusts and the ABLE account. A few pieces of housekeeping as we get started. Please consider that we would love to hear your questions throughout the webinar. So go ahead and submit those as they come up. And then at the end of the webinar, we're going to take time for some questions and answers. So I won't be answering your questions as they come up, but I really appreciate you putting them in as they come to your head. So please do not hesitate with any questions that you have. My name is Alicia Wolf. I work with the ARC Greater Twin Cities. I'm an advocate and planning specialist here and have been employed with the ARC for over 4 years. I work with families often through many of our future planning programs, and I'm an advocate for guardianship, as well as I know a little bit about pretty much everything else. So please feel free to call if you have any questions, and anything in relation to trust and ABLE accounts, please submit throughout the webinar. For our agenda today, we are going to be discussing a short overview of what the ARC Greater Twin Cities does with families, how we support people, and services that you can utilize with the ARC Greater Twin Cities. We will be discussing what is a trust, why is a trust created, what the different types of a trust are, and resources that people can utilize. We will also be discussing what is an ABLE account, the benefits of having a trust and an ABLE account and the differences, the cost of an ABLE account, the limitations of an ABLE account, and how you set one up. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll go through some questions and answers. This webinar is slated to go from 12:30 to 2 o'clock. The presentation itself will probably take about 45 minutes. So then whatever time left over at the end for questions, we will take the remainder of the time. If we're not able to get to any questions, or if there's any questions that are too specific for the group, we will make sure to follow up with you afterwards. All right, the ARC Greater Twin Cities mission is to protect and promote human rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Basically, we want to make sure that people have access to the community and the life that they want in whatever way works for them. Because everybody's life and everybody's goals are different, and so our goal at the ARC is to make sure that everybody has equal rights to a life that will make them happy. And we do so through our services, information and assistance. I say that we're the first stop shop for anything disability related. So if you have any questions, you can call us and we can send you in the right direction. A lot of people feel like they come across a lot of red tape, which is where individual advocacy comes into play as well. Oftentimes families don't even know the questions that they need to ask or don't even know what information they're missing. So if you ever feel that there is a question that you need answered but you don't even know what the question is, please call us and our advocates are happy to talk you through all of those pieces. Public policy and community engagement. It's very important to be engaged in local public policy, state public policy, and federal public policy, and the ARC Greater Twin Cities does a great job of helping our community stay up to date about what bills and laws are coming into play that affect people with disabilities. We have a great Facebook page and email list if you want to be a part of that to know what's going on. Healthcare access is where a lot of our calls come in. This is where we help people with medical assistance, make sure that they have healthcare that fits their needs. We work a lot in abuse prevention to make sure that everybody is a safe member of their own community. We have a resource center. We focus a lot on self-advocacy, and we have planning services as well. A big part of the reason that many of you are tuning into this webinar today is questions that a lot of people ask when they come to us with future planning questions as well, such as what will happen when I'm gone, or what will my future or my loved one's future look like? How can I set things in motion? How can I prepare as much as possible? And who's going to be there to take care of the things that I'm taking care of currently? These are all very daunting questions that people come to us and ask, and we have a few programs where we help people go through all of these questions and plan for the future. So this is a great first step when thinking about estate planning, is tuning into this webinar. The planning services that we have for people are varied. Future Life Options was our first program that we developed about over 10 years ago now. Future Life Options is an all-encompassing future planning program where we walk through legal planning, financial planning, and quality of life planning. And that first started when parents were saying, what's going to happen when I'm no longer able to act as a caregiver? So we really developed this to help people think of what that future care is going to look like for a person, regardless of if the family has a lot of support or if, you know, the caregiver is really the only person they're caring for an individual. We really look at a person's whole life and how to make sure that they're always living a good life. The Transition Vision Program, our project, was developed about 6 years ago, and this Transition Vision project is aimed to help students transition from school life to adult life. So we help students think about what they want out of their life, help them talk about their dreams and their hopes, and then how to actually accomplish those goals. So we talk with students, what can you do in the next year, 3 years, and 5 years to really make sure that you're reaching your goal and what you want out of your life. Person-centered planning is getting a big rejuvenation currently with the Olmstead Act. And person-centered planning is all about people being in the center of planning for their life. We all know what we want out of our life, and everybody needs help getting there. So person-centered planning is really about that, really talking about what a person wants and what supports they need to accomplish their goals. Because none of us are an island, none of us can do it on our own, so person-centered planning is a great way to really think about the future and what needs to happen to make those goals a reality. The Transition to Adulthood Workbook is a workbook that families can purchase from us, and it walks through all of the different things that people need to be considering when they're transitioning from school life to adult life. As many of you know, in the time of transition when a person is about 18, there's a lot of things to consider, and it can be really overwhelming. A lot of parents say to me, I feel like I'm missing something, or I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can. And this workbook is really aimed to make sure that people aren't missing everything and that you have all of the information that you need in an easy to utilize format. The Get Set Online tool is an online interest profile where people can, it's very visual based, so people can put in what their interests are, what they want out of their future home, so that it's a way for them to think about, even if it's just the very first time, it's a way for them to think about what they want out of their life, to take that tool because it turns into a really beautiful visual, and then you can use it in an IEP meeting or you can use it to share with your team. So we developed a variety of planning services because we recognize that everybody is at a different stage with thinking about and planning for the future. And so we want to make sure that whatever stage you're at, you have the ARC's support. If you have any questions about this throughout the webinar, please go ahead and put it into the question box, or you can contact me after the webinar. Again, my name is Alicia, and I work for the ARC Greater Twin Cities. All right, so let's get into the webinar here. The first question being, what is a trust? A trust is an estate planning tool that is specifically utilized to set money aside for a need. Today we're going to be talking about trusts that are specific to people with disabilities and to families that support people with disabilities. Please know that there are many, many different kinds of trusts that a person can utilize, and the ones that we'll be talking about today are ones specifically geared towards families that we serve at the ARC Greater Twin Cities. These trusts are established by families to ensure that any money left to their children does not impact their government benefits. You may be thinking to yourself, I want to leave my child $10,000 upon my passing, or I want to split my estate 3 ways between my 3 children. But my son is on Social Security and medical assistance, and if a person has more than $2,000 or $3,000 to their name respectively, then that disqualifies them from benefits. And so that can put parents in a really tricky spot where they want to leave their child money and they want to help them plan for the future, but they feel like they can't because of the asset limits of Social Security and medical assistance. A trust is a way to leave your loved one with a disability money for their care so that they can still utilize medical assistance and Social Security. And that's what we'll be talking about today and going into all of that. A trust is an estate planning tool that allows an individual's money to be set aside for them. So whatever amount of money it be, whether it's a few $1,000s, whether it's a few $1 million, whatever your circumstance, a trust is a great thing to set up. And we recognize that a trust does cost money to set up, but it is always more expensive to not plan than it is to plan. The different types of trust that we'll be going into today are a special needs trust, a supplemental needs trust, and a master pooled trust. These are the three types of trust that we see families that have children with disabilities utilize most often, and there are distinct differences between the three, which we will go into individually. Something to know about all of the types of trusts is it's vitally important to work with an attorney that really knows what they're doing and has an expertise in special needs planning. You may have a uncle or a neighbor or a family attorney that says, yes, absolutely, I can set up a trust for you and it'll all be set. And while they are well-meaning and their heart is in the right place, I would highly recommend that you use an attorney from our list of estate planning attorneys, or an attorney that really has this area of law, has a great deal of knowledge in this area of law. I've seen too many trusts be done incorrectly, and it's just very, very important that these trusts, since they are so specific and they do allow people to save money without it affecting their government benefits, there's a lot of rules and regulations to go along with them. So please reach out to our Greater Twin Cities for that pool of estate planning attorneys in the Greater Twin Cities area. We're happy to provide that to you. Each of these trusts are managed by a trustee. So that is somebody that you designate to manage the money that is within these trusts. So you can make sure that the money is going towards the specific needs of your loved one. These trusts are in accordance to Minnesota statute and law. So if you watch a webinar that's from California, you will hear different information. If you watch a webinar from New Jersey or from New Hampshire or Alabama, the information will likely be varied. And so it's important that these trusts that you're learning about right now are specific to Minnesota law. And the trust needs to be, if you're setting up a trust for a person, it has to be set up in the state in which they reside. So if you live in Utah and you're supporting your sister who lives full-time in Minnesota, you need to set up a trust that's in accordance to Minnesota law. One of the things to note throughout any of these trusts is that you can't take cash out of a trust. Any money in a trust has to be managed by the trustee and sent directly to the provider or to the service. So if you needed to take money out of a trust and give it to a dentist, the check would have to go directly from the trust to the dental office. The last thing to note before we go in specifically to each of these trusts is that you can have a special needs trust and a supplemental needs trust at the same time. And as I explain what these trusts are, I'll share more about why this would be a benefit. So we're going to start by discussing the special needs trust. We here at the ARC Greater Twin Cities like to call this the oopsie trust, in quotations, or the first party trust. Now, you can think of the special needs trust as a reactive planning tool. So think of this as, grandma passed away and left your child $10,000. And you say to yourself, whoa, 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 my son can't have $10,000 in his name because I want him to still be able to utilize Social Security and medical assistance. So that's when you can utilize the special needs trust. So you can take the money that is in your loved one's name and then put it into a trust. Other situations where you would possibly need a special needs trust is for Social Security payback. If Social Security made a miscalculation of the money that your loved one was receiving and suddenly you got a check for $5,000 or $20,000, whatever it be, you can establish a special needs trust to put this money into. Or a settlement from an accident, through a hospital or a car accident, anything like that. So this UPSI trust, we call it a first party trust because the money is in the individual's name and then is transferred into the trust. So if it's in your son's name, he's the first party, but he can't have that money, so then it goes into the special needs trust. One of the caveats of this trust is that there is a payback clause. So let's say that there's $5,000 in this trust and your loved one, whose the trust is for, your loved one passes away, there's $5,000 left in that. A requirement is that that money is going to go to pay back Social Security and medical assistance for money for services accrued over their lifetime. So if your son had that $5,000 left over in that trust, the government would say, well, over their lifetime, they utilized at least $5,000 worth of services, so we're going to take that money that was in the special needs trust to pay back what he utilized. This trust is created by an attorney, and it is the UPSI trust, the first party trust that we recommend as a reactive planning tool. Any questions about this, please submit to the question box on the webinar. The next trust that we're going to discuss is the Supplemental Needs Trust. So this is the proactive planning tool. And so this is the trust that you want to establish right now or soon to ensure that this trust is always existing so that the special needs trust isn't a necessity in the future. This trust is a third-party trust, which means that any money going into the trust can never be in the individual's name. So if your son gets $10,000, you can't put it into a supplemental needs trust because it was his assets, it was his money at one time. So if it was ever your son's money, then it has to go into a special needs trust. But the supplemental needs trust is established so that it never has to pass through your son. So you can put in your will, I want my estate to be split 3 ways. I want my estate to be split between my 3 children, but then instead of listing your son's name, you would list your son's supplemental needs trust. So it never actually goes to him. You don't have to be concerned about the money going to him and having to be redistributed later. The money would just go directly into the supplemental needs trust. So it's a proactive planning tool. It's intentional planning to make sure that your money goes to where it needs to go. This trust was established to make sure that you can leave money to a person without it ever affecting their benefits. And Social Security and medical assistance do not consider money in a supplemental needs trust as the person's income. The same with the supplemental needs trust. Now, this is important because that is the biggest reason that most people develop these trusts. Any money left in an account when a beneficiary passes away can be designated to a beneficiary. So let's say that your son passes away and there's still $5,000 in that trust. You as the parent and as the trustee can designate who you would like the beneficiary to be it a cousin or another person in your family or a charity, whatever your choice is, that is something that you can set aside for. So the Supplemental Needs Trust is the trust that we recommend families utilize here at the Arc Greater Twin Cities as the proactive planning tool. Again, you can have the Special Needs Trust and the Supplemental Needs Trust. So let's say that you go to your attorney right now and you want to plan for the future. You want to put in your will that all the money goes to the Supplemental Needs Trust, and you can set it up and do everything that you need to do. But in the future, you know, grandma didn't know that you set up a trust and she just leaves $10,000 to your son. That's the case in which you would need to set up the Special Needs Trust. Which is another point of why it's really important to let your family know that you have done all of this work for your estate planning and your Supplemental Needs Trust, because then you won't have to jump through those hoops later. This is another account that is also set up by an attorney. If you're listening to information nationwide about trust for people with disabilities, you'll hear a lot of people use the term Special Needs Trust, and oftentimes it's what we think of here as the Supplemental Needs Trust. So the Supplemental Needs Trust, again, is a proactive planning tool to make sure that your loved one can save money. And any money in the Special Needs Trust or the Supplemental Needs Trust is utilized for anything that's disability related that isn't already covered by Social Security and medical assistance. An example would be if your son goes to the dentist and he needs a crown and root canal, but medical assistance doesn't cover those things. That's where you could take money out of the trust to pay for those services. People pay for a variety of things through their trust, be it vacations, computers, healthcare, anything that Social Security and medical assistance doesn't already cover. Any additional questions, please put in the question box. The next trust that we're going to talk about is the Master Pool Trust. This is a trust that is housed through a nonprofit organization, and the nonprofit as a whole acts as a trustee. The Arc of Minnesota and Lutheran Social Services are two organizations here in the Twin Cities that we refer families to if they want to utilize this kind of a trust. And people most often use a Master Pool Trust when they don't feel that they have people in their life that they could designate as a trustee. The Master Pool Trust does come with joiner fees and monthly fees. So it is initially to set up, it doesn't seem as expensive, but long term, the monthly fees can add up. So you really have to think about how you want to be paying for these services. Through the Master Pool Trust, it can be more cost effective in setting it up, but again, long term, it's just a different way of considering. For the Special Needs and Supplemental Needs Trust, if you don't know of an individual in your family or a friend who you would want to act as a trustee, there are fiduciaries or professional trustees that you can hire. So if you don't have anybody in your family, but you don't want to go with a Master Pool Trust, you do have options. The Master Pool Trust is a good option, and again, the Arc of Minnesota and Lutheran Social Services utilize these trusts. Okay, so now we are going to jump into ABLE accounts. An ABLE account functions as a checking account for people to save their own money. This ABLE account was developed by a dad, actually, in Minnesota, who wanted their child to have the same advantages that other children have in a 529 account. So an ABLE account is modeled much in the same way as a 529 account, which is an account that people can utilize to save for education. So an ABLE account, think of it as a way for people to save their own money in a checking account, but it is not considered by Social Security up to a certain dollar amount. So many states have their own ABLE accounts, and Minnesota created ours in January of 2017. So it's still a fairly new offering to people here in Minnesota. It's a wonderful tool for people to have their own checking account or savings account so that they can feel more power and control of their money. This checking account is developed online. You can apply online, which I'll talk more about later, and you get a debit card. So it really promotes self-determination and money management abilities within people, and it's not an estate planning tool. So if you're thinking, oh, grandma gave my son $10,000, I can put it into an ABLE account. Well, you could. It would be better for you to set up the supplemental needs trust to make sure that grandma can put the money in there, and then this ABLE account is used as a checking account for people to manage their own money. How much money can I put into my ABLE account? When the ABLE accounts were developed, it was the concept was to ensure that people with disabilities could save up their own money and feel like they weren't always bound to live in a life of poverty. Because when you're on Social Security and medical assistance, you can only have $2,000 to $3,000 respectively. And that doesn't leave a lot of room for people to be able to save up money or to feel comfortable if they ever wanted to go off of Social Security. So the ABLE account was really developed to give people more options in saving their own money and feeling like they had more control over their own assets. For an ABLE account in Minnesota, you can have a maximum amount of $350,000 in the account. If you want Social Security to quote-unquote not care about the money that is in the account has to stay under $100,000 over their lifetime, and you cannot put more than $14,000 in it per year. So if you're utilizing the ABLE account to make sure that your loved one can save up money and potentially go off Social Security if they're on it currently, you can only put $14,000 a year in this account, up to $100,000 over their lifetime. So anytime within a year that account goes over $14,000, or in their lifetime it goes over $100,000, that's when Social Security starts to consider the money in an ABLE account as an asset. So again, $14,000 per year and $100,000 per lifetime is not considered as an asset by Social Security. And that's money that you can save in an ABLE account and still utilize that government benefit. A beneficiary can only open one ABLE account. There are multiple options of ABLE accounts throughout the country. So if you want to really dive into ABLE accounts and you want to learn about the pros and cons to each state's plan, you could potentially open up an ABLE account in Ohio or in Florida. That is definitely your choice. There are pros and cons of each ABLE account. You know, what kind of debit card you have, what kind of investment opportunities there are, how much it costs to establish the ABLE account. A lot of people in Minnesota utilize the Minnesota one or the Indiana one. There's also ones in Florida and Ohio, like I had mentioned, but it's just important to note that you can only open one account. An individual is eligible if you're eligible for Social Security because of your disability, and if your disability was present before the age of 26. These are the laws right now for the ABLE accounts. Again, like I mentioned previously, it's written similar to a 529 college savings account. These accounts are really developed to make sure that people have money and can save money for things that they need in their life, be it education, you know, whatever this person wants to save their own money for. A very important note for the ABLE accounts right now as they stand in Minnesota is an individual who's setting up the account must be able to manage their own finances. So if a person is under guardianship, they have to be able to set up the account on their own and manage the funds themselves without support from their guardian. If a person is under guardianship and they're not able to do this, to manage the account on their own, that's when a conservatorship would be needed. And a conservatorship is different than a guardianship. Conservatorship is a completely separate court process that's different from guardianship. Guardianship is helping a person make decisions about their life, and conservatorship is helping a person make decisions about the estate. So, If you're supporting somebody who's over the age of 18, they need to be able to manage the ABLE account on their own to set it up. And if they can't manage it on their own, that's when a conservatorship is needed. If you're setting up an ABLE account for somebody who's under the age of 18, then a parent can set it up for a person. And that's definitely something that I encourage people to do if they need to go through the guardianship process. I recommend that you set up the ABLE account before a person turns 18 and help them establish that ABLE account so that they can use it in the future. To establish an ABLE account, you can, I usually get to it by just Googling Minnesota ABLE account, and it's the first one that pops up. But this is the page that you'll find, and it's savewithable.com/Minnesota is what the URL is. And when you go to the website, you click Start Saving, and that's how you can create an ABLE account with or for a person or on your own. The Minnesota ABLE account is strictly done online. So if you go to your bank, they likely will have no idea what you're talking about when you say that you want to set up an ABLE account. This is because it's still fairly new. It was only developed just under a year ago. So it's still taking people a while to catch on to what's available, but it's only set up online. It's strictly online, and they send you a debit card, and you can view the funds in your account all online, but there's no actual brick and mortar location to go to set up an ABLE account plan. Another thing that you can do with an ABLE account is you can see right there in the middle it says invest easily. The ABLE account money that you put in there, you can choose if you would like to use this money to invest. So you can choose a risky investment where you put that money into kind of stocks and bonds and you can try to make some money from that, or you can choose a less risky and use it strictly as a checking account. That is another function of the ABLE. It costs $25 to set up an ABLE account, and you can select the kind of plan that you want. After creating the account, a representative from the Minnesota ABLE plan will call your family or the individual who the plan is for and ask a few security questions, which is another reason that a person needs to be able to manage the plan on their own if they're over the age of 18. Because this representative will call them, ask them a few questions, ask them if they know what the ABLE account is, why they want to utilize it. Those are just a few things that they'll talk to people about. Some resources that we have here for you is, as a reminder, our professional pool of attorneys. So this is attorneys that we have met with and we have had families work with, and we trust to do good work in estate planning. And we trust to know how to set up a supplemental needs trust or a special needs trust. Not to say that attorneys that aren't on our list aren't competent, but it's a good place to start if you don't really know who to reach out to. The savewithable.com/Minnesota is where you can go to open up your own ABLE account. Okay, so now I would love to take some questions as I'm just going to try to pull up the questions here as they came in. One moment as we are pulling out these questions. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so can you set up an ABLE account with a financial planner such as an account at Fidelity? So Fidelity, they are financial planners and they can help guide you in what kind of ABLE account throughout the country works for you, help you know your options, but they aren't the ones that would actually set it up for you. It's always through the Minnesota Able Account website. So you by no means need a financial planner to set up an Able account, but some families find it a great benefit because then it's a financial planner to help you look at all of your assets, all of the information that you have as a family, and see how the Able account fits into that. Who can contribute to a trust, and what can the money be used for, is a question that came in. So depending on the trust, depends on who can contribute to it. So the Special Needs Trust, which is the first party trust, this one, it's a first party trust. So the individual themselves can contribute to the trust as well as other people. Now, we don't recommend that other people contribute to a special needs trust, especially if you're worried about the payback clause, which is why we say that usually it's just a first party trust. So usually just the money in the special needs trust is from the person that it's for, whereas the supplemental needs trust, absolutely anybody can put money into that trust except for the person that it's for. So if it's for your son cannot put his own money into a supplemental needs trust. But anybody else can. So parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, you know, a teacher that your child really connected with that they wanted to leave some money to. Whatever the situation be, anybody except for the person that the trust is for can you put money into the supplemental needs trust. And the money, again, can be used for anything that isn't already covered by Social Security or medical assistance. One example is if your son really wants to go to Ireland, you know, and really wants support in traveling to Ireland, you can pay for that support and that vacation through the trust. I used the example of a doctor's office or a dental office earlier as well. So anything that's not already covered by Social Security or medical assistance can come out of the trust. Something that families may do is you may establish a supplemental needs trust right now and then not have it used at all until it's funded upon your death. So you could establish a supplemental needs trust right now and it could be completely empty for another 30 years until it's utilized. So that's one way that you can use the trust. Another way, alternatively, is you could set up a supplemental needs trust right now and put a few $1,000s in it, and you could start spending money out of that trust as a way to give a future trustee a guide as to how you want that trust to be used. So if you said, you know, I want this trust to pay for a new mattress every 2 years, and I want this trust to pay for my son to go get a haircut every 2 months, you could have that money come out of the supplemental needs trust now and fund the trust now so that a future trustee would know your intentions and what you would want that trust to be spent on. What type of a trust? The next question is, what type of a trust is a pool trust, a special or a supplemental needs trust? That's a great question. So the master pooled trust that's held within the Arc of Minnesota or Lutheran Social Services, that trust acts most similarly to a special needs trust. And I say that because there is a payback clause. So the pooled trust does have a payback clause. Any money that's not utilized in that trust is likely absorbed through the government, and then anything additionally would be to the organization in which it's held through. So, question, what is the most flexible for paying for items? So the way that I'm reading this question is if you wanted to make sure that your son always had the possibility to go out and buy a video game, or to go out and to buy a new dog toy for your dog, whatever it be. The account that would be best for this is the ABLE account, because the ABLE account you can take out cash, you can use it as a more flexible spending account, as a checking account or as a debit account, however you see it. Whereas the trust, the money has to be written via check or money order from the trustee to the organization or for the item. So the ABLE account definitely has more flexibility. It gives people more power and control over their money. And it makes it so that people feel more control and have that ability to know how to save up the money, their own money, and practice that skill. What if the beneficiary moves to a new state, is the next question. So another great question, good questions everybody. If the beneficiary moves to a different state, we would recommend that you talk with your attorney. Sometimes it's okay in flux, so sometimes that account can, that trust can stay as it is for a little bit, but we would just recommend talking to your attorney here in Minnesota and then possibly consulting with an attorney in the new state, because it really depends on what similarities and differences the Minnesota Supplemental Needs Trust has with the trust that acts within the state that the beneficiary moves to. Okay, so the question is, what about SSDI? Is there a limit to contribution for ABLE if on SSDI? So the laws that Social Security has set on the ABLE account are the same for any Social Security program, whether it be SSDI or SSI or retirement benefit or however that be. It really depends individually on the Social Security account. So if for SSDI or for SSI, if you can only have $2,000 in your name, then that's a hard and fast rule for Social Security. But the ABLE account allows you to save up to $14,000 a year, $100,000 over lifetime without those government programs minding what's in the ABLE account. So short answer is it's the same rules. Okay, so the next question is, so ABLE accounts are not an option for an individual with disabilities that does not receive SSI or SSDI. This is not true. So you can utilize an ABLE account if you have a disability and if your disability was acquired under the age of 26. Those are the rules to having an ABLE account. But the biggest reason that people use an ABLE account is so they can save money past that $2,000 threshold that Social Security allows. You know, people want to be able to save more money than that $2,000 asset limit. So that's a big reason that the ABLE account was developed and that people are utilizing the ABLE account. But as long as you have a disability that happened before the age of 26, you can certainly have an ABLE account. One moment as I read the next question. Okay, so the next question, it is a specific question, but I'm going to answer it because it's good for the sake of the conversation and for the group. So this person's son is 20 years old and they're his guardians. They state that he would not be able to answer questions about the ABLE account or manage his own finances. Do we have to apply for conservatorship before getting an ABLE account? And this person is confused because they're able to manage his finances through guardianship. So this is definitely a confusing point, and it's something that is getting fleshed out right now in Minnesota since the account is so new. But since your son, regardless of being his guardian and being able to manage his finances through a guardianship, since your son is not able to manage questions on his own about his own finances, you would need to get a conservatorship if you wanted to open an ABLE account for him. I have many feelings about this, and we're working to change this law with attorneys on our list. But as it stands right now, yes, if you wanted to open up an ABLE account for your son who isn't able to manage his own finances or ask any questions about it, it would require a conservatorship. And a conservatorship, again, is a whole different court process, different from guardianship, and it's about helping a person manage their estate. And typically, I advise people that have children with intellectual and developmental disabilities that a conservatorship is not needed because, like this person states, you can help a person manage their own finances through guardianship. And a conservatorship comes with a lot of reporting to the court and a lot of necessary steps to take, but it is a requirement for the ABLE account currently. Okay, so the next question is, isn't an ABLE account the same as a special needs trust with no trustee? So this question actually comes up a lot because when you look at it high profile, it does seem very, very similar. The biggest difference with a special needs trust is indeed it comes with a trustee, and the ABLE account is an actual checking account. So you can get cash from it. You can use your debit card to get, you know, a box of pretzels from the grocery store. So it comes with a lot more freedom, and it gives people much more self-determination because it's their own money in their own account that they're able to spend. So it gives people that claim over their own money, over their own funds, and helps them know that this is your money, and it gives people that ability to learn how to manage their own money with support. You know, whereas a trust, it's technically not their money, which is why Social Security doesn't consider money in a trust as a person's assets, because it has its own tax ID number, it's managed by a completely different person. So it's a matter of this being your money and being able to spend it how you wish versus in a trust, it being somebody else's determination on how that money is spent. Great questions, everybody. Thank you. One moment as I read the next question. Okay, so the next question is about the $100,000 limit on the ABLE accounts. And so they're saying that if you save up $100,000, it would only, and you do it $14,000 a year. So if you're saving the max amount of $14,000 a year, it would only take you about seven and a half years to save the $100,000 total. Yes, that's true. If you save $14,000 a year, it would reach to $100,000 fairly quickly. You can save more than the $14,000 a year or the $100,000 over lifetime. It's just those are the limits in which Social Security is not going to acknowledge that money as an asset. So you definitely can go over $100,000, but at that point, or $14,000 per year, but that's the point in which Social Security would start counting that money as assets. And anytime the account goes over $14,000 a year or $100,000 over the lifetime is when Social Security would care about that. So those, if you're doing it to make sure that a person's assets are not penalized by Social Security, you just want to make sure that it's never over 14 in a year and never over 100 over life. The next question. Okay, so this question is too specific, so I think that we're going to move to the next one. One moment. And that is all of the questions actually that we have for today. So if anybody has any other questions, please submit them. I'll give you about a minute or two to submit those questions. Otherwise, thank you so very much for tuning into the webinar today. Really appreciate you taking this time. If you have any questions for me, please don't hesitate to reach out. My name is Alicia. I work for the ARC Greater Twin Cities. You can reach us at 952-920-0855. And if you would prefer, you can always email us at info@arcgreatertwincities.org. We have this presentation today, and it is being recorded, so please encourage people that weren't able to attend today to tune in the future. And we always have many webinars and continued education courses very similar to this. In 2 weeks, we have a webinar about caregiver support. We have information about guardianship and healthcare and abuse prevention. So please utilize the ARC Greater Twin Cities for any ongoing questions that you may have. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful day. We are now going to conclude the webinar.